You're listening to Witch Wednesdays, a semi-weekly podcast source for all things witchcraft in the modern world. Join your host, Steph, on Wednesday mornings to chat about seasons, Sabbats, and all new witchcraft topics to help you make your life more magical. Welcome back to Witch Wednesdays. I am Steph, and I am here with a guest today, and we are going to get into some fun questions about her newest book out. But first, I'm going to turn it over so she can introduce herself and let you know where you can find her online.
Hi, I'm Michelle T, and you can find me online on Instagram primarily. I'm Michelle at Michelle T's, Teaz, and I'm a writer. I've got over 20 books that are either already out or in the pipeline, and I do all kinds of writing. And throughout my life as a writer, I've had a magic practice since I was a teenager, and as I just keep publishing, I keep getting opportunities to write and talk about my magical practice, whether it's, doing my tarot book that I have, Modern Tarot. I teach a workshop called Writing for Witches. I just came back from a week of that in Provincetown. And now I'm getting ready and gearing up for Modern Magic, which is a bit of a follow-up to Modern Tarot. And it's more essays about my practice and little spells and activities and rituals that you can do at home.
Well, I am so excited to chat about that. And I do think that a lot of listeners will already be familiar with some of your works because I know that
Oh,
Modern Tarot was particularly helpful for me in my practice. And I have gotten that feedback from a lot of listeners as well. So I'm sure they're going to be very excited that you are coming out with another book.
oh, that's so nice to hear. I'm glad. I'm really glad. It's fun. I've written a lot of memoirs and some fiction and poetry, and it's really fun with Modern Tarot. It was the first like functional book that I wrote. Like this book serves a specific purpose. It's like a how-to. It's really fun to have something like that.
Yeah, absolutely helpful resource. And I think that's going to come across to readers in your newest work as well, because it's got your tone with like fun stories and your
Hmm.
history and feels like very personal to read. But then there's actually like very actionable rituals and things in there to be able to be used.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. And there are different levels. Like some of the rituals are really, real easy. And then some like will require you probably to go to like Michael's to get some crafting supplies.
Oh
So
darn, twist my
depend
arm.
depending on, your level of craftiness, there's different activities, different rituals and spells.
Well, let's start then. Before we talk specifically about the book, let's start with a little bit about you and kind of like what your practices and journey has been like to lead you to the point of putting it all in this particular work.
Sure. I grew up in New England, which is a very witchy place to grow up. I actually went to Salem State College for a semester, and I grew up in a really working class enclave with a lot of women, relations, old that were, mothers, aunts, grandmothers who were very witchy. They would never say this about themselves because they were fearful Christians. Really, that was the veneer over their more sort of indigenous natal witchiness, but they were always talking about spooky stuff. And, I had my grandmother bring me to a psychic tea room in Boston when I was, an adolescent. But it was also very like, don't talk about this. It's like, it's not okay. Don't tell anybody we're doing this. It's just for fun. We don't believe in it. And it was like this really strange sort of like, they couldn't shake the sort of ingrained judgment of the church, and they weren't in a position to be able to question it. That's just not where they were at. It's not where their consciousness was, or their politics, or whatever it is that you make some people question it and others not. But they were always sort of guiltily engaging in low-key witchcraft on the side. So that was sort of where I came from. And then when I became a teenager, I was an outcast. I was goth in the 80s. And it really was kind of brutal. I feel like there's some movies that make it seem like it was really cool, like if you watch like Valley Girl or something. But it was like, I don't know, it was a really small, racist, like weird, like xenophobic town in New England, and anybody who was different just really literally got beat up. So it was kind of intense, but I found my people, and we were all interested in tarot. We liked to go to Salem and visit Lori Cabot's shop. There were some witchcraft stores in Boston we would go into, and I learned how to read tarot with my best friend Peter Anthony, who is still a tarot reader and a channeler, a medium. And we just I don't know. We just picked up, like, we'd pick up a spell kit, we'd burn dragon's blood. We'd read, we'd buy a book of spells. And it's almost like we didn't trip on it. It was like, of course we like this. Of course this is what we do. And my mother was like a little freaked out at it, but also never told me not to do it or that I couldn't do it. So I just I think she was more upset about like my black lipstick, than the incense that I was burning in my room. And I just found that it worked, and I didn't understand how it worked, but I would always have something occur as a result of a spell I was doing. And it wasn't always what I wanted, but sometimes it would just, sometimes the entire situation that I was doing a spell around would just go away as a result of the spell. It wouldn't necessarily come to fruition in the way I wanted, but sometimes it would blow up in my face. But I felt like I was really working with a type of energy, and I couldn't explain, still probably shouldn't try to explain why it worked. I just knew that it did. And I really trusted always that the universe was much, much bigger than what I was taught in Catholic school, than what most people around me seem to believe. I knew that there are huge, beautiful mysteries, and we can interact with those mysteries. And I think that's really what witchcraft was and still is for me primarily. It's a way for me to interact with the mysteries of the universe and situate myself as a creature of the universe, as another like beautiful elemental energy in the universe that gets to, play and interact with the unknown.
I love that. And I really love your story and how that unfolded for you. And you do,
Hmm.
mention the goth aspect and growing up in the 80s in
Yeah.
your book. That's how it starts, actually. Um,
Yeah.
I love that story for people because I think nowadays we have access to so much more information
Oh, it's
than we
yeah.
did. But I think like sometimes that gets people stuck in this pattern of like never actually doing the spells or feeling like they don't know enough. There's so much more they need to research and not actually
Right.
work. So it's like so refreshing to hear from somebody that was like, we just dove in, me and my friends, and just
Yeah,
doing
we just
things.
dove in. It's true. It's so true. We just did it. And because there wasn't, you know, there wasn't the internet, so there wasn't, websites about it or, like Tumblrs. So we really did just have to. What was great about that is we didn't have gatekeepers necessarily. We just thought, oh, these things are being presented like in a shop for us to buy. So that must mean that we can do it, right? That must mean it's for us. And so we did. And when I got to my early 20s, I moved to San Francisco. I didn't really know anybody. I knew my friend Peter, who I mentioned, but I was going there to like be queer and be a writer, and I would just bring a tarot deck with me everywhere I went. And so I would find myself in these social situations. And this was the 90s in San Francisco in the Mission, which, if it's like it was a scene as creatively vibrant and transgressive and lively as like, the Lower East Side in the 80s. It was like something was really happening. There were lots of things to do every single night, and I would go to them with my tarot deck, and I would just ask strangers, do you want to pull a card? And that's how I met so many people. Because nobody says no. Nobody ever says no to pulling a tarot card. So it was really fun. I got to meet people. I got to get a little glimpse of their personality through that one card pull. Yeah. So, and I immediately, set up this big altar in my room. And it was so funny that I didn't recognize it as an altar. It was just where I kept my candles. I hadn't really thought about an altar at that point, it just wasn't part of my practice. But there were my candles, and if I was going to do a spell, I would do it on this bookcase because it's so handy. And there were all these other sort of trinkets and objects that had meaning to me. And at some point, I was like, oh, this is an altar, and I started really regarding it as such and trying to keep it charged and cleansed as such.
I really love that, all the like free spirit energy that comes along with that, because I feel like that can sometimes be missing in a lot of practices today, just because there's,
Hmm.
like you said, like so much gatekeeping and sometimes just feeling like you're not good enough and not measuring up to what you see online and social media.
Yeah.
And it can feel
Yeah.
like, if I'm not doing it right, why am I doing it at all? And I love that
Right.
the book is like so open. And especially in your book, you have some sections and some things that would be considered, like if you were looking it up on YouTube or something, it would be considered more advanced witchcraft. And it's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
everything. And I love that you're not, putting labels on it or trying to be like, you have to be at this certain level, like whatever you're doing. If you're just jumping in, you can do all of these things in the book. And I feel like it's such like a friendly way to approach it.
I mean, it's just what worked for me. I never found, a coven or anything with any kind of structure. And like, I really wanted that for a while. And I might even still want that, but that just hasn't been my path. And so I think it's really worthwhile to let people know that like you can make your own path, and you can do these things. And I feel like, you know, I understand the word witch is a very European word. It's a very white word. Um, and I just want to say that, like, whatever it is, call it witch, call it, conjure, call it bruja, call it shaman, that's our native state, right? That's how we are born. Like every land, people's initial efforts towards engaging spiritually were these pagan, you know, like the self in communication with the natural world, the self in communication with the divine. Like we just did it. And then all these other things happened, right? All these patriarchal religions came in. But I feel like this is what we've always done. And I think it's really just a coming back to that is like what this great renaissance we're experiencing right now is. It's just coming back to that real sort of like ground zero spiritual power that I think we're all born with.
And speaking of that concept, something that comes up in your book that I thought was a lot of fun, you call it ritual groove. I love that ritual groove in modern magic. Can
Yeah.
you share how the listeners, and if they're going to read your book, how they can get their ritual groove in their modern magic?
Yeah, I just feel like, it's very individual and you do have to pull away any sort of cultural pressure that you might feel. Like it's so funny. It's sort of like me growing up, there was more of a cultural pressure to not do witchcraft, but I feel like the equivalent of me today, it's the cultural pressure to like, did you put your crystals out under the full moon? Did you set your intentions? So it's really funny. It's like whatever sort of like external pressures you may feel either to like go into the broom closet or to just be like a super high achieving witch. Like you have to peel that away and get to the heart of like, what is your practice? And you might start that by putting your crystals out under the full moon, or you might start that by, lighting a candle. You might start that by meditating. It's like whatever works for you. But it's like riding that line between being super lazy so that you never do anything, which I understand, and also like feeling like you can be chill about it. It's not a job. There's no patriarchal God hanging over you, going to be mad at you, if you didn't set your new moon intentions. But like, what's that sweet spot that feels good for you? Like, sometimes I do have to push myself to do more, and then I'm happy that I did it. It's easy when you have downtime to just want to stay down, and you do have to sort of conjure some energy to get up and get into that ritual groove, whatever that means for you. But yeah, it's like, what's interesting to you? What captures your imagination? Like when you imagine yourself doing a spell, what does it look like? What are you wearing? Are you wearing anything? Are there candles? Is there smoke? Are there crystals? Is there like craft projects? You can really let it, be what you want it to be. But it
That's
feels,
sort of
I think one of the things I was talking about also with the ritual groove is that like when I do, step into it, I feel like I'm entering into a sort of heightened space. Like I really have charged, the little office that I also, do my work in, and my kid sometimes watches TV, and like I've charged it because my altar is there into a sacred space in that moment. And I get to focus on my connection, with the universe, with the unknown. And that's really where the groove is at. It's like I can be using anything, any ritual tools that engage my imagination and engage enjoyment. But it's really about like setting that intention that like, yeah, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to like care for my spiritual self because it is an aspect of myself. And I think that, if we just look at the history of humanity, there's always been, religion or spiritual activity. Like we're kind of wired for it. And it can be really easy, I think, if you've been burned by patriarchal religion to just throw it all out the window. But the reality is, there's probably some aspect of you that would really get a lot out of engaging in ritual and getting into that ritual groove. So it's about finding what does it for you.
I think that's sort of the point that I'm at right now. And I think that's why your book spoke to me so much as I was
Oh,
reading.
yeah.
Because I am at that point where like I'm sort of figuring out like what I want to do next. Like, first of all, my personality is very like earth element heavy, which like has a lot of good things, but also makes me very, very lazy. And
Yeah,
it comes through a lot where I'm like, I just don't want to do anything. And I really need
totally.
to like do some candle magic and like fire energy to like get myself out of that. But I think
Yeah.
also as I'm like looking back, because I also went to Catholic school and left that very far behind. But I think there's a lot of
Hmm.
shadow work that I need to do around that because there are some things where like it comes up, when I'm reading, I'm like, oh, this seems interesting. And then there's part of me that's like, nope, that's too close to deities. That's too close to,
Uh-huh.
ritual like structure that I had in Catholic school. And I don't want to do any of that. But like, there's part of me
Right.
curious. So maybe I need to like work on that and go back to it and figure out, where my boundaries are with these things and relearn some things because that's just the practice is it's not going to be the same as what I was doing 10 or 20 years ago. It's changing every day.
It does change all the time and it's allowed to. And that's another thing that's really cool about this like suite of practices is that you're not just like locking yourself into like an unchanging dogma. You're just, you're engaging with mystery and that can look different to you during different times of your life. And like I wrote a lot in the book about my Catholic upbringing because there is, now that I have enough distance from it that I don't feel quite as reactionary against it. I can really see the ways that it also influenced my spiritual practice. And a lot of that, quite honestly, is because so much of Catholic ritual was stolen from, indigenous European pagan practices and folk magics. So it's like, yeah, of course the smoky incense and the velvet and the gold and the deities, and we're lucky of all the flavors of, Christianity. I feel grateful that I did get Catholicism because they kept the goddess, right? And in the saints, they kept a pantheon in a way. So there's a lot there to really engage your imagination. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think that and I'm still at the point of like feeling like heavy pushback from it, but like Yule is
Yeah, no,
my
go
favorite
with that. That's
holiday. Yeah.
important.
Yule is my favorite
Yeah.
holiday and it comes up like every time. And people are like, well, you have a Christmas tree and you have this. And I'm like, those are all pagan. I am reclaiming them.
Yeah, come on. And like it's never, yeah. Jesus is not the reason for the season.
No, not at all.
The length of daylight is the reason for the season, like
Yeah,
the
and I
amount of darkness is the reason for the season.
exactly. But yeah, it's just
Hmm.
that is like something like it was, I think your book came to me at the right time. And I think that's
Oh,
true for a lot of people. For some reason, I think that this like comes up, especially when it's got the religious pushback, during Samhain and Yule season, because there is
uh-huh.
that like spirituality and things that came from pagan practices that have been adopted in
Yeah.
Christianity. Like it just comes up a lot this time of year.
It really does. It really does. I mean, especially around Yule, it's like a son is born. Oh, do you mean like S-U-N? Like, yes, a son is born. You guys really went way too literal with it.
It really did.
Yeah.
But it's my favorite things to talk about during December. Like
I
educating
know.
everybody on
Every December, I always search and find this one article that's online that's all about just this history of so many Christmas, European Christmas traditions, including like the flying reindeer, that there was like a reindeer goddess that the Nordic lands, indigenously, believed in or spoke about. And, the shamans of those regions, which were icy, and filled with snow, wearing these red and white outfits that were very similar to the Santa Claus outfit and like throwing magic mushrooms, which were red and white in that land, like down people's chimneys. Like there's this wild article out there that I love posting and just blowing people's minds and just be like, believe what you makes you happy, people, but just know that, you know, it's also a fiction, you know. It's as much a grope in the dark as anything. And, you know, the thing is, because it is a grope in the dark, I'm like, does that dogma really make you happy? It's such a weird, punishing, fearful, you know, like it's not real. And like you could say the same thing about my thing, it's not real. And I'm like, sure, it's not real, but it's like liberating and fun and playful, you know? It's like we
Yes.
don't ultimately know anything. So why not pick something that actually, you know, engages your imagination and your spirit in a positive way instead of in a weird policing, punishing way?
Yes. And absolutely comes across in this book, and I think comes across in your other writing as well, is that you
Hmm.
really have this concept of playfulness and customizing things to make it your own. And I appreciate that because I do easily get trapped in that, like, I'm not doing it right. And,
Yeah.
making it more of that punishing that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I don't want
Yeah.
to do that. I want it to be
No.
playful and happy. And like everything in your book comes across as playful. I really enjoy that.
Oh, I'm so glad. I mean, it's so interesting to hear you say this because it's familiar and I've heard it before and I've felt it before. And you know, the reason I teach these writing for witches workshops is like writers and witches are two categories of people that like get so sidelined by imposter syndrome. Like there's so many writers who are like, I'm not really a writer, you know, and it's like because they're afraid they're not good or because they haven't published a book. And I'm like, I don't know, you're sitting down at your computer and you're writing. So I think you're a writer, you know? Same thing about not really a witch. Like, I don't know why, because like a woman with a sword and like a moon tattooed on her forehead hasn't like touched your shoulder and whispered something into your ear. It's like you're a witch. Like you're lighting candles and setting intentions and believing that there's something bigger than you that you might be able to engage with. Like that's witchcraft, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely agree with that and enjoy
Yeah.
that. And I do think that a lot of listeners are going to resonate with that as well, because I think when you see like the ultra curated on social media and you think that everybody is like living witchcraft 100% of the time, like all day long, and it's just like, that's not really how most of us live.
No.
Very few
Oh my
who do
God.
that.
Totally. It's like Pinterest. It's like I don't have my Pinterest aesthetic
Yeah.
down. It's
I'm sure
like
that's
it
like the
doesn't have
same for writers too. Like you don't have to be writing 20 hours a day every single day
right.
to be considered a writer.
Exactly. And like there is something that's really not talked about that much and that I think is very powerful and it goes for writers and for witches. You know, like you're a witch all day long. Even, you know what I mean? Like when you're a witch all day long and that actually says something about how you view the world. You know, the way you process your life and the things that you see and witness, the thoughts that you have in your head, like these are the thoughts of witches. This is the experience of witches. And it's like a life practice that you can embody all day long. And like, yeah, still do your witchery, do your rituals, honor the holidays, you know, honor the moon, but you're also already doing it. Like it's just what you are. And I feel like that about writing too. It's like obviously I have to sit down and put some stuff on the computer. That just has to happen. But also all day long, I'm thinking about the world in a way a writer does, you know. It's like my thought processes are a writer's thought process is the way I, yeah, just the way that I analyze things is the way a writer analyzes things. And there's something really important and powerful about recognizing that. And I really feel like this is all about capitalism, just making us so brainwashed that we have to be so productive. And if we do anything, we need to be the number one best at it, or else we won't succeed because there's only room for about three people at the top. And so you better hustle. You know, it's all of these terrible messages of like, I don't know, success, which isn't a real thing. And we bring that into all areas of our life because we're swimming in capitalism all the time. So we have to we have to get our witchcraft outside of capitalism, I say as I try to sell my witchcraft book to support my life. I
We
mean, it's really
can't.
hard. We're trapped in it, you know? It's
Yeah,
like you
I mean, we're trapped. There's nothing you can't escape it. It's never going to be like we need money. We all need to live. We all need the money buys the food and puts the roof over your head.
yeah, no,
It's just a
yeah,
fact of like our world. There's absolutely nobody can escape this. It's not.
totally. And like some people really love competition and they love trying to sort of be the best. They love like a personal best and things like that. And that's not my nature. So, you know, it is probably easier for me to say that than other people are like, no, my book needs to be so good. And I'm like, your book could just be okay. And maybe others will really love it. Put it out there. You know, that's sort of my attitude towards everything. So I understand that it's a special way of thinking. But I do think that It's it's less stressful. It's a less stressful way of thinking. So try to introduce a little bit of it into your life and take it easy. Um and know that you're always a witch and go to your altar and go to your rituals with excitement and joy, you know? If it feels like a job, don't do it.
Yeah, that's absolutely how I feel. I feel like everybody who's like heavy fire sign listening to this is like, no, wrong, complete opposite. But
But you know, those fire signs are probably loving making it like a job. They're like, I
yeah,
love that it's my job, you know? And it's like, that's great. If there's joy and pleasure in it or satisfaction, if it feels meaningful, then you should do it. But I just don't think that's everyone's vibe, right? Other people, for you, I would prescribe you some like sleep magic. You know what I mean? Like just
yeah.
do dream work and stuff. Like do things like that. That's really easy to do, like setting intentions before bed, having a little altar right by your bed, recording your dreams. I mean, you can get into a whole deep dive with that I think actually really fulfilling.
Is there anything that you do on a semi-regular basis that you feel helps, keep you in line or keeps like the your witchcraft at the forefront of your mind?
Yeah, I definitely honor the new and the full moon, and I feel like I've been doing that for so long that I'm really in the groove of it, and I can feel it in my life. I have way too many tarot decks and oracle decks, but I have two that I really love, and that I use only for the new and full moons, and I give myself special readings for those, and I really don't read other people with them that much, but sometimes I do. And one of them is the She Wolf Tarot by Devaney. I think her name is Devaney Amber Wolf. I might be saying her name incorrectly. But I love the She Wolf Tarot. I think it's so wonderful. And the other one is the Secret Dakini Oracle, by Penny Slinger and Nick. Oh, I can't remember his last name. I'm so sorry, but it's a great spooky oracle deck, loosely based on the tarot that goes deep into sort of um, tantric sort of teachings and imagery. So I love those, and I always do that. I set intentions that go along with whatever new moon, whatever sign it's in astrologically. I do 10 intentions that are sort of calibrated with the energy of that zodiac sign. So I do that. And I do keep an altar and I spend a little time at my altar. I try to light something herbal and have a candle and some smoke going all the time every day. I do that. So when I go into my room, my altar room, which is also my office, I'll go in there to work or to meditate. I'll kind of light the candles and the incense. I do meditate every day. I mean, I fall off some days, but like that's basically been a consistent practice for me now for about a year. And I can't recommend it enough to people who, you know, do to practice witchcraft in any way. It gets you so in touch with what's out there, with the beyond, with the divine, with the ether. It gets you so in touch with your own psyche. Um, you know, a lot of people say, I am terrible at meditating. My brain just, goes off. It's like, and I just want to say everyone's mind goes off. That's what meditation is. It's sort of, at least at the start, right? It's sort of, dueling with your mind or it's actually coming to know the true essence of your mind, which in my opinion, in my experience, is your mind pumps out thoughts the way your heart pumps blood through your body. It's automatic. It's not about wisdom. It's not about what's best for you. It's just constant chatter. And it's really been so helpful to know that that's what it is. And to be able, as a result, to tune into higher thoughts. And, when something comes in that actually is wise, you can kind of see it for what it is. But I think that meditation is really, for me, it's really crucial. To grow my intuition, to grow any sort of psychic capacity that I have. So yeah, and I've been recording my dreams, but I go in and out of that. Today I woke my son up for school late because tried to go back into a dream to kind of figure out some stuff that was going on. And I was like, oh no, I'm sorry you're late. I was doing dream work. It is not okay. So
Whoops.
I'll have yeah, big whoops. I really do have to get up when my alarm. This thing happens, your alarm goes off to wake your kid up for school, and it immediately blasts all your dreams away. So what I
Right.
was doing was just laying there, trying to get back into that drowsy space where I could reconnect with because I knew I had been dreaming. And I was like, okay, what is it? And sometimes, you can get it to come back to you. But then I think I dozed off.
It is truly amazing how fast it leaves you when you wake up.
Yeah.
Like, I am always amazed that, like, in the first couple of seconds, I'm like, okay, I remember every detail. And then literally 3 minutes later, nothing.
Boom, gone. I know. It's really wild. And it's, I mean, how great, because it kind of lets you let go. And as humans, we have a really hard time of letting go of our realities, And for the past 6 months, I've been part of a Maha Yoga practitioner training cohort, and Maha, it's not yoga, it's not physical yoga, but it's the spiritual, mystical teachings behind yoga, and and they're really ancient and they're really beautiful and they feel really true to me. And there's a lot there that this the basis of it is this reality that we're experiencing is not what we think it is, right? We think that this is it and this is real and serious, and it's actually nothing. It's like, a fractured, it's like we're all just like the way I think of it is that we're all shards of God. It's like there's the God that's whole, out there in outer space where we're like all one, the oneness of the divine. And then there's here where the divine is just fractured into so many different pieces, and I'm a piece of it. And our dreaming life is also a sort of strange reality like that, also. And we know not to take our dreams seriously, but it's really hard for us not to take this plane seriously. But in these teachings, it's really not that big of a difference between the reality we experience in dreams and the reality we experience waking. They're both equally unreal. Because the reality is that we are the divine. We are divine, and we're all interconnected.
Think that's a great way of looking at it.
I like it. It feels true to me. I've had different little revelations through my life that have just always sort of nudged me in that direction. So it's been really lovely to get deep into these ancient teachings that really affirm that belief. So it feels pretty true to me. And it's been really interesting to be like, okay, well then how do I work with my witchcraft practice in this? Like what am I, if this reality isn't real, what am I doing, at the altar? But it all ends up sort of coming to the same conclusion, which is just that like ultimately this is really unknown and mysterious, and I still get and it helps me connect with it, right? And even though none of this, is real per se, if I, swish my hair moves back. And so I feel like, we impact the energies of this realm, and I want to do that.
I really appreciate too how you said it's come to you in revelations like over the years. Like you're not going to jump in and know everything and have every answer of how you feel about the universe. Like this is a lifelong process. And I
It's
might check back with you in 20 years and
lifelong.
you might be completely different.
Yeah, it's lifelong, and you know, it's so ultimately unknown. Like I can create my little world of practice and philosophy and mystical thought that feels really true to me. But I will still be the first to say that like I have no, I don't know. I think
Nobody
that,
knows. Not
it's
possible.
really hard, I think, to be like, no, this is you guys, after we die, this is what happens. Like who can honestly
Yeah,
really say
nobody
that,
knows that.
Yeah, it's like I know it feels really good and instinctively true for me, and I'm going to go towards that, but I would never try to convince another person of it. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, come on over here if this feels, attractive to you, if you're attracted to these sort of ways of thinking and practices, if something about it does feel true, if it gives you joy, come over, We're all just here on earth until we die. So let's, have a good time.
That's something that I appreciate about witchcraft because how it was raised was so much like, you believe this or else. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't want to be out here convincing anybody of anything. Like, I just want to
I
live
know.
my life. Like, if this doesn't
Yeah.
resonate with you, it's not for you. That's okay.
That's okay. I know. I first encountered that with Buddhism. I used to live in San Francisco, and I went to the Zen Center a lot, and I was like, oh, wow, they really want you just to like actually see if it works or not. And if it doesn't, like, it's cool, like you can go away.
Beautiful.
No hard feelings. It's really so different than being raised in the Catholic Church, of course, where it's like, no, we've created this fairy tale and you've got to believe in it or else. Um, and it's like so wild, like to think that you would believe that you would really go to some sort of like weird, like horror movie in the core of the earth that's like filled with fire and pain and like demons. It's like,
So strange.
it's so wild. It's so wild. But people do. And they orient their entire life around it. And it's so sad because, here we are in the middle of the most incredible mystery, and you're like really limiting your ability to experience
Missing
it
out on
and
all the
enjoy
great
it.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here today. Listeners, we're recording it a little bit early, but as you're listening to this, the book came out yesterday. So congratulations to you, Michelle. And I know that
Thank
you're going to
you.
have wonderful sales and everybody's going to love it. So listeners, I'm absolutely going to have it linked if you want to check it out. It's my favorite color.
Me too.
Makes me so happy. So it's just like the cover and the colors are just like as bright as the information inside. So I think that you're really going
Oh,
to enjoy it. So thank you, Michelle, for being here today.
you're so welcome. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
I really appreciate everything that you had to share. And listeners, that's everything that I've got for you this week. Everything will be linked in the show notes and over at witchwednesdays.com. And I will see you all next week.
Need even more witchcraft in your life? Subscribe to Witch Wednesdays on Patreon and YouTube for all types of exclusive bonus content like spells, recipes, book reviews, and more, or even order personalized tarot readings and spells. Be sure to follow on Instagram at Witch Wednesdays Podcast. And you can find all these links and more at witchwednesdays.com.